Mark had only lived in the neighborhood for 3 days when he noticed something strange. Every time he stepped outside his house, someone was watching him. Not from far away. Not by accident. No, it was always the same person, standing behind the same window, with the same suspicious eyes. It was Karen, the woman who lived next door. At first, Mark tried to ignore it. Maybe she was just curious about the new neighbor. Maybe she liked to keep an eye on the street. But the way she watched him felt different. Her eyes didn't look curious, they looked angry, almost like she was waiting for him to do something wrong. And she didn't even try to hide it. If Mark went to check his mailbox, Karen's curtain moved. If he took groceries from his car, she opened her blinds a little wider. If he watered his plants, she came outside and stood on her porch with her arms crossed. It felt uncomfortable, but Mark told himself not to think too much. New place, new people, maybe this was normal for this neighborhood. But the real trouble began on the 4th day. That evening, Mark came home from work tired and hungry. He parked his car in his own driveway like always. It was perfectly inside the boundary lines, and he had checked the HOA rulebook when he moved in. Everything he was doing was correct. But as soon as the car engine turned off, he saw Karen marching toward him at full speed. Her steps were sharp, her face was red, and her mouth was tight like she was ready to explode. Mark stepped out of the car. "Good evening," he said politely. Karen didn't even respond. Instead, she pointed at his car and shouted, "You can't park like this." Mark looked at the car again, confused. "I'm parked in my own driveway." Karen shook her head quickly, as if she knew some secret rule. "You're breaking HOA regulations," she said in a loud, dramatic voice. "Your car is too close to the sidewalk." "It's not on the sidewalk," Mark replied calmly. "There's still plenty of space." "That doesn't matter." Karen snapped. "I have already taken a picture. I will report this. You are blocking the community walkway." Mark looked around. No one used that walkway. In fact, the street was empty. "I'm not blocking anything," he said. Karen leaned closer, her eyes narrowing. "You new people think you can do whatever you want. But not here. Not in my neighborhood." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Your neighborhood? I thought it was everyone's neighborhood." Karen's face twisted as if he had slapped her with the words. "Don't get smart with me. I know the rules better than anyone. And if you don't follow them, I can make things very difficult for you." Mark took a small breath. He didn't want to argue. He didn't want to fight. "I think there's a misunderstanding," he said softly. "Let's just talk about it calmly." But Karen wasn't listening. She took out her phone, pointed it at his car again, and snapped more photos. Then she whispered something strange, so quiet that Mark barely heard it. "You'll see. I always win." She walked away angrily, leaving Mark standing in silence. Later that night, Mark sat in his living room trying to relax. But he couldn't stop thinking about Karen's threat. Was she serious? Would the HOA actually care about something so small? He tried to shake the worry away. At 10 p.m., there was a loud knock on his front door. Mark's heart jumped. Who knocks that late? When he opened the door, he didn't see Karen. He saw 2 police officers standing on his porch. "Good evening, sir," one officer said. "We received a complaint from a neighbor about illegal parking." Mark blinked. "Illegal parking? In my driveway?" "That's what the caller said," the officer replied. Mark felt a cold shock run through his body. Karen really did it. She actually called the police over his parked car. "Would you mind showing us where the vehicle is parked?" the officer asked. Mark led them outside. They looked at the car, measured the space between the driveway and the sidewalk, checked the angles, and exchanged confused glances. "You're perfectly fine," one officer said. "There's nothing wrong here." Mark sighed with relief. But before he could say anything, Karen came rushing out of her house. "There! You see? I told you," she shouted. "He's blocking the walkway." He's breaking the rules. The officers tried to explain, but Karen wouldn't stop yelling. He's dangerous for the community, she said. He thinks he can take over our neighborhood. Mark stared at her, shocked at the lies she was throwing. Finally, the officer put up his hand. Ma'am, please calm down, he said firmly. There is no violation here. Karen froze. Her face changed. First confusion, then anger, then something darker. The officers gave Mark a small apologetic nod before leaving. Karen remained on her driveway, staring at Mark like she wanted him gone. Like she was already planning her next move. Mark felt a chill deep inside him. This wasn't just a difficult neighbor. This was something far worse. This was the beginning of a war he never asked for. And Karen wasn't finished yet. The morning after the police visit, Mark woke up with a strange feeling in his chest. The sun was bright, the birds were singing, and the street was quiet. Everything looked peaceful. But Mark knew something was not right. When he stepped outside to leave for work, he saw an envelope taped to his front door. It was white, thin, and official-looking. 3 letters stood out in bold red ink. HOA. Mark frowned. Already? How? He took the envelope inside and opened it slowly, expecting something small. But the first words hit him like a punch. You are hereby warned for blocking community access. Mark stared at the paper, speechless. His parking was legal. The police confirmed it. Even the officers told Karen she was wrong. So why was the HOA sending him a warning? At the bottom of the letter, he saw something even more surprising. Complaint filed by neighbor, Karen M. Mark closed his eyes, breathing deeply. This woman, she's not going to stop. When he left for work that morning, Mark noticed Karen standing on her porch with a mug of coffee. But she wasn't drinking it. She wasn't enjoying the morning. She was watching him. Her smile was small and sharp, like she had won something. Mark didn't give her the satisfaction. He got into his car and drove away without saying a word. But as he pulled out, he noticed Karen raising her phone and snapping another picture of his car, again. When Mark returned home later that day, he decided to do something normal to clear his mind, mow his lawn. A simple, peaceful task. But as soon as he started the mower, Karen stormed outside like she had heard an alarm. She didn't shout this time. She didn't make dramatic gestures. No, she acted calm. Too calm. She walked to the edge of her property, folded her arms, and watched him silently with a grin. Mark felt uneasy, but he kept working. After 10 minutes, Karen pulled out her phone again and took pictures of him mowing the grass. Mark stopped the mower. Why are you taking photos of me? I'm collecting evidence, Karen said, still smiling. Evidence of what? Mark asked. You'll know, she replied softly, turning around and walking back into her house. That smile chilled him more than her yelling ever did. That evening, Mark wanted answers. He called the HOA office. A woman named Linda answered. She spoke softly, like she was tired. Hi, Mark said. I got a warning letter today. Oh, Linda said quickly. You're the new homeowner next to Karen? Her tone changed. She sounded like she already knew trouble was coming. Yes, Mark said slowly. Is there a problem? Linda sighed. You're not the first neighbor she has reported. How many? Mark asked. Too many, Linda said quietly. She files complaints almost every week. Mark felt his frustration growing. But the police said my parking was fine. We know, Linda said. But if a resident files a complaint, we have to document it. It's policy. Even if it's false. So you send warnings without checking? There was a long pause. Then Linda whispered something surprising. We've tried to stop her before. But she knows every rule. She uses them against people. Be careful. Karen likes control. Mark hung up the phone slowly. Control. Suddenly, everything made sense. The watching from the window. The photos. The threats. The police call. The HOA complaint. Karen wanted power. And she wanted Mark to feel trapped. Later that night, Mark sat on his porch, trying to think. The air was cool. The streetlights were glowing. It should have been peaceful. But then he heard footsteps. Karen was walking toward him, holding a clipboard and a smug smile. "Evening," she said, as if nothing had happened. Mark didn't answer. "I wanted to let you know," Karen continued, "that I filed another complaint today." Mark felt his jaw tighten. "For what?" "For mowing your lawn at an unauthorized time," she said proudly. Rule 12B. You can only mow between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. You started at 6:05. Mark stared at her. "Are you serious?" "Rules are rules," she said. "If everyone breaks them, the community falls apart." "I was 5 minutes late," Mark said. "Well," Karen replied with a shrug. "Then maybe next time you'll think before you break the rules." She turned to walk away, then paused. "Oh, and I sent the HOA pictures," she added. "They'll probably fine you next time." Mark felt something inside him shift, a spark, a warning, a sharp sense of danger. Karen wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was trying to trap him, one rule at a time, one complaint at a time, one lie at a time. She wanted to break him. As she walked back to her house, Mark noticed something he hadn't seen before. Her curtains were already half open. Her phone was already in her hand. And she kept glancing back at him like she was waiting for him to make the smallest mistake. This wasn't just watching anymore. This was hunting. And Mark finally understood. Karen hadn't attacked him once. She had just begun. For the next few days, Mark tried his best to avoid Karen. He went to work early, came home late, and kept his curtains closed so she wouldn't see him moving around. He wanted peace. He wanted a normal life. But Karen had different plans. On the 5th morning, Mark woke up to a strange noise outside. It sounded like a camera shutter, quick, sharp, and repeated. He opened his window and looked out. There she was. Karen stood very close to his car, almost touching it, taking pictures from every angle, front, back, left, right, like she was a detective collecting crime scene evidence. Mark stepped out onto the porch. "Karen, what are you doing?" Karen didn't even look up. "Documenting." "Documenting what?" "You know what," she said in a slow, smug voice. "I have no idea what you're talking about," Mark said. Karen finally turned her head and gave him that same chilling smile. "Don't worry," she said. "The HOA will explain everything." She walked back to her house with confidence, as if she had already won a battle Mark didn't know had started. Mark decided he had to be prepared for whatever she was planning. He set up a small outdoor camera facing his driveway. Nothing fancy, just enough to record if Karen tried something again. That evening, as he checked the camera's live feed on his phone, he felt a cold shock. Karen was standing in her yard, staring directly at the camera lens. No movement. No expression. Just a long, silent stare. Mark stepped outside. "Can I help you?" Karen didn't blink. "Why are you recording me?" "I'm recording my driveway," Mark said. "Because you keep taking pictures." Karen took one slow step forward. "Are you spying on me?" "What?" "No." "I'm protecting myself." Karen tilted her head. "Protecting yourself from what?" "From false complaints," Mark replied firmly. Karen laughed, a short, cold, emotionless laugh. "You think I need to lie? You're making mistakes all by yourself." Then she turned and walked away without waiting for an answer. Mark felt a heavy feeling settle in his chest. She wasn't just angry. She was planning something. Something bigger. 2 days later, it happened. Mark found a bright yellow notice hanging on his mailbox. HOA violation, inappropriate vehicle storage. Storage? Mark didn't even own more than one car. He opened the notice and read in disbelief. You parked across the property line, blocking your neighbor's flower bed. Mark's mouth fell open. Karen's flower bed was a good 6 feet away from his driveway. This was impossible. He looked at the attached photo in the notice and instantly understood Karen's plan. Karen had taken a picture of his car from a strange angle far back, far left, making it look like the car was closer to her flowers than it really was. Forced perspective. A trick. A lie cleverly framed through a camera lens. Mark felt the anger rise. This is insane. He marched straight to the HOA office. For the first time, he wasn't going to ignore it. Inside the building, he met Linda again, the same tired-sounding woman he spoke to on the phone earlier. "Oh," she said softly when she saw him. "Karen again?" Mark handed her the violation notice. She staged the photo. "Look at the angle." Linda studied it inside. "We suspected she might start doing this." "Start?" Mark asked. "So this is new?" Karen used to just complain, Linda explained. But now she has been sending photos with every complaint. She's getting smarter and harder to stop. Mark rubbed his forehead. This is madness. "There's more," Linda said quietly. "She came here yesterday." Mark looked up. "Why?" Linda hesitated. "She asked if we could start a document on you. A special case file." Mark felt his stomach drop. "A what?" "She said she suspects you're a rule breaker and that you're trying to ruin the community." Linda lowered her voice. "She also said she thinks you're dangerous." Mark stared at her, stunned. "Dangerous? For parking his car?" Linda leaned forward. "She's building a story. A long story. Piece by piece." "A story about what?" Mark asked. "A story where you're the enemy," Linda said. Those words hit Mark like a punch. Karen wasn't attacking random issues. She wasn't filing random complaints. She was creating a narrative. A picture of Mark as a villain, a threat, a problem. And she planned to use the HOA as her audience. When Mark returned home, he saw Karen standing in her yard again, watering her flowers slowly, almost dramatically. As soon as she saw him, she said loudly, "Did you get the notice?" Mark didn't answer. Karen continued, "Don't worry. I'll help you understand the rules. You need someone like me to guide you." Her voice sounded sweet, but her eyes were ice cold. Mark walked to his door, but Karen raised her voice further, making sure everyone around could hear. "People like you ruin good neighborhoods. But not this one. I'll make sure of it." Mark froze. Not because of her words, but because he realized something chilling. Karen wasn't just trying to punish him. She was trying to turn the entire neighborhood against him. This wasn't about his car. This wasn't about rules. This was personal. Karen had chosen him as her target. And now, she was preparing for her biggest attack yet. For a while, Mark hoped Karen would slow down. Maybe she had gotten bored. Maybe she had moved on to someone else. But deep inside, he knew the truth: Karen didn't stop. She only paused long enough to plan something bigger. 3 days passed quietly. Too quietly. No complaints. No pictures. No yelling. Just silence. And with Karen, silence was never a good sign. On the 4th morning, Mark stepped outside to go to work. The air was cold and heavy, and the sky looked like it was hiding something. As Mark reached his car, he noticed something on his windshield. Another envelope. Another HOA notice. He ripped it open, and this one was worse than before. Major violation, car abandoned in driveway. Abandoned? Mark stared at the words in disbelief. His car was not abandoned, he used it every day. Who would say something so ridiculous? Then he saw the complaint line. Filed by Karen. Mark clenched his jaw. This was insane. She was making things up now, not even pretending to be logical. He took the notice inside and sat on his couch, trying to calm himself. A part of him wanted to scream, but he held it in. He thought for a long time. Then he decided. He wasn't going to be scared anymore. He wasn't going to let Karen bully him. He grabbed his phone and walked back outside to take pictures of his own. Exact angles. Clear proof. He needed evidence. But the moment he lifted his phone, a voice came from behind him. "What are you doing?" Karen stood on her porch, wearing a bright red robe and holding a cup of tea like she owned the entire street. "Taking photos for the HOA," Mark said calmly. Karen tilted her head. "Trying to hide something?" Mark took a steady breath. "No. Just protecting myself." Karen smiled, slow and poisonous. "People who hide things say that." Mark ignored her and continued taking photos. Karen didn't like being ignored. She shouted, "You think you're smart, don't you?" No answer. "You new people," she said louder, "you come here and think you can break rules and nobody will notice." Still no answer. Karen's voice rose, sharp and angry. "You can't beat me. I know the board. I know every rule. I write the reports that keep this neighborhood safe." Mark turned and looked at her. "Safe from what?" Karen froze. For the first time, her smile disappeared, replaced by a strange, quick flash of fear or anger. Mark couldn't tell. Then she whispered, "People like you." Mark felt a cold shiver run down his back. What did she mean by people like you? Before he could ask, Karen marched back inside her house. And an hour later, the real nightmare began. Mark was working on his laptop when he heard sirens in the distance. They were faint at first, then louder, then closer, too close. He stepped outside. 2 police cars pulled up in front of his house. Mark felt the air leave his chest. Not again. Not today. But this time, Karen was already outside, waving her arms wildly like she was signaling an airplane. "There! That's him," she shouted. "He's dangerous. He threatened me. He tried to damage my property." Mark blinked. "What?" 2 officers approached him. "Sir, we received a call about a disturbance." Karen pointed at Mark dramatically. "He told me he would destroy my flowers. He said he would make me pay. I have it all recorded." Mark felt his stomach twist. "Recorded? What recording?" Mark looked at the officers. "I didn't say anything like that." Karen gasped loudly, pretending to be hurt. "He's lying. He always lies. He's breaking rules, he's spying on me, he's threatening me, he's dangerous for this community." Her voice shook, but her eyes were sharp and full of triumph. The officers looked confused. "Ma'am, do you have any proof?" Karen quickly held up her phone. "Yes, I have audio." She played something. It was a voice. A male voice. But it was not Mark's voice. It was deeper, harsher, almost robotic, like someone edited it or used a fake recording. Mark stared at Karen. "You faked that?" Karen shrugged. "Maybe you forgot. Stress does that." The officers listened carefully. One of them finally spoke. "This doesn't sound natural. It seems edited." Karen's face twitched. "No, no. It's real. It's real." The second officer looked at Mark. "Do you have any footage from your security camera?" Mark opened his phone, pulled up the camera app, and showed them the time he was outside taking photos. The camera clearly recorded everything, including Karen shouting at him. And the audio in her recording wasn't heard anywhere in the real footage. The officers exchanged looks. Then one officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, this seems fabricated." Karen froze. "What? No! You're all making a mistake." The officer continued, you cannot file false police reports. Karen's face turned pale, then red, then pale again. The officer added, if we receive another false call, you may face consequences. Karen didn't speak. She just stared at Mark with pure hatred. Mark felt a chill even though the sun was shining. She didn't get in trouble this time, but she had been warned. And now, she was furious. More furious than ever. This wasn't over. This wasn't even close. Karen had failed today, but she wasn't done. She would come back with something bigger. Something crazier. Something that would push everything to the next level. And Mark knew. The worst was still coming. The next morning, Mark woke up tired. Not because he didn't sleep, but because his mind didn't rest. Karen's fake recording, the police showing up again, her wild stories, it all felt like a nightmare he couldn't escape from. But as he stood in the mirror brushing his teeth, he made a decision. He was done being scared. If Karen wanted a war, fine, but he wasn't going to fight it blindly. He needed proof, facts, and protection. He needed to show the HOA in the neighborhood who she really was. For the first time, Mark felt something he hadn't felt since he moved in. Determination. He started with the simplest step, gathering evidence. He printed out every HOA notice. He saved every text and email. He organized camera recordings in folders with timestamps. He wrote down every time Karen yelled at him, stalked him, or made up a complaint. By afternoon, his dining table looked like an investigation board, papers everywhere, photos, printed emails, sticky notes with dates and times. It wasn't just messy. It looked like a case. Mark stared at the table and whispered to himself. She wants to build a story? Fine. I'll build the truth. In the evening, Mark saw something strange outside. Karen wasn't watching him from the window. She wasn't on her porch. She wasn't even pacing around her yard like usual. Instead, she was standing in the middle of her driveway, talking to two neighbors. At first, Mark didn't think anything of it. But then he noticed something troubling. Karen kept pointing at Mark's house. Every time she pointed, her expression changed, dramatic, fearful, exaggerated. The neighbors nodded slowly, listening with concern. Suddenly, Mark felt his stomach sink. She wasn't stopping. She was recruiting. The next day, Mark walked to his mailbox and found something new. Not a notice. Not a warning. A handwritten note, folded in half. He opened it. Be careful. Karen is telling everyone you are dangerous. No name. No signature. Just those words. Mark looked around the street. Curtains moved quickly. Someone closed their window. Another neighbor looked away. Whispers. Silent stares. Nervous faces. Karen was poisoning the neighborhood. She was turning everyone against him. And she was doing it quietly, like smoke spreading through a room. That night, Mark knew he couldn't wait any longer. He emailed the HOA and requested to attend the next board meeting. Within 10 minutes, Linda replied. Of course. Please bring all information you have. This has gone too far. Mark felt a small breath of relief. Hope, even. Maybe this time someone would finally listen. He organized everything neatly into a binder. It was thick, almost too thick, full of dates, screenshots, camera photos, and video stills. He even typed a timeline so the board could understand the order of events. He was ready. He wasn't the scared new neighbor anymore. He was prepared. The night of the meeting, Mark drove to the HOA office with the binder resting on the passenger seat. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. As he walked inside, he noticed something that made his heart drop. Karen was already there. She was talking to the board members, moving her hands dramatically, pretending to be scared. When she saw Mark enter, she instantly changed her expression from poor victim to cold enemy. Oh look, Karen said loudly. The troublemaker finally arrived. Mark didn't respond. He didn't need to. He took a seat, placed his thick binder on the table, and waited. The room went silent. The board president cleared his throat. We are here to discuss multiple complaints filed by Karen, and counter-concerns raised by Mark. Karen leaned forward like she was ready to attack. Mark leaned back, calm but focused. The president nodded toward Mark. Please begin. Mark opened his binder. He didn't talk fast. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue emotionally. He presented everything slowly, clearly, and with proof. Every complaint Karen filed, countered with camera footage. Every lie she told, disproven with timestamps. Every accusation, matched with evidence showing the truth. The board members flipped through his binder, their eyes widening more and more. Then one board member looked at Karen and asked, "Do you have evidence for your claims?" Karen lifted her chin proudly. Of course. She reached into her bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. And a blurry photo. The board looked confused. That's it? One member asked. Karen's face twitched. I have more at home. Mark remained silent, watching her crumble slowly. The president asked calmly, Karen, why did you tell neighbors that Mark is dangerous? Karen's eyes widened. I never said that. Mark quietly slid the anonymous note across the table. The board members looked at it. Then at Karen. She swallowed hard. Her confidence was melting. Her lies were cracking. Her mask was slipping. For the first time, Karen looked small. Scared. Exposed. The board president closed the binder and looked at both of them. We will investigate this fully, he said. But from what we see tonight, the situation is not what we expected. Karen's face turned pale. Mark finally felt a moment of victory, not a loud victory, not a big one, but a quiet, satisfying one. The truth was finally out. And Karen knew it. But Mark also knew something else. Karen wasn't the type to give up easily. She had lost this round. But she would be back. And whatever she planned next, would be worse. After the board meeting, the neighborhood felt different. Mark didn't know if it was just his imagination, but something in the air had changed. People were quieter. Curtains stayed closed longer. Conversation stopped when he walked by. Karen wasn't outside anymore. No staring from the window. No yelling. No fake smiles. It was like she had vanished. But Mark knew better. Karen didn't disappear. Karen was plotting. 2 days after the meeting, Mark received an email from the HOA. We are launching an investigation into Karen's reports. Please be available for follow-up questions. Mark exhaled slowly. Finally, something was happening. But in the same moment, he felt nervous. Karen wasn't the type to stay silent. If she felt cornered, she would fight harder. The investigation began with a simple step. The HOA visited the neighborhood. 3 board members walked door to door, asking neighbors about their experiences with Karen. Mark watched from his window as they spent almost 20 minutes at each house. Some neighbors looked uncomfortable. Others looked relieved. A few even whispered, glancing nervously toward Karen's home. Mark knew what that meant. They had stories too. Stories they were afraid to tell until now. Later that afternoon, Mark received a message from Linda. Can we visit your home for evidence review? Mark welcomed them in. The board members sat at his dining table, and he opened the thick binder again. He played camera footage for them. Karen sneaking along the driveway at night. Karen taking pictures from low angles. Karen pretending to clean her yard while watching him. Karen yelling things that didn't match her written complaints. Every video made the board members' faces more serious. Then Mark showed them the false police recording incident. The board president shook his head. This is not normal behavior. Another member whispered, she's gone too far this time. Linda looked at Mark. We're sorry you had to deal with this alone. For the first time since moving in, Mark felt seen, not as the new guy under attack, but as a neighbor who deserved fairness. Meanwhile, Karen was still silent. Not a word. Not a complaint. Not a photo. Just silence. But silence from Karen wasn't peace. Silence from Karen meant she was waiting. Watching. Calculating. On the fourth day of the investigation, something unexpected happened. Mark stepped outside to take out the trash. As he walked toward the bins, he saw Karen sitting in her yard, in a lawn chair, facing his driveway. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't yelling. She was just sitting there, stiff, cold, and staring at him like he was a stranger trespassing on her world. Mark pretended not to notice and continued walking, but Karen suddenly spoke. "You think you're clever," she said softly. Mark kept his eyes forward. Karen continued, "You think the board is on your side now. You think you won." Mark didn't answer. She laughed quietly, a tired, dry laugh. "You won nothing. These people, they don't care about you. They never have." Mark turned to her. "Why are you doing this?" Karen's eyes narrowed, becoming small and sharp. "This neighborhood has rules," she said. "Rules that keep everything perfect. People like you bring chaos." Mark shook his head. "I haven't broken any rules." Karen leaned back, her voice calm but dangerous. "You broke the most important one." "What rule is that?" Mark asked. Karen whispered. "You didn't listen to me." A strange chill climbed up Mark's spine. Before he could respond, Karen stood up and walked into her house without another word. That evening, the HOA sent another update. "We discovered 5 previous homeowners filed reports about Karen. We will continue reviewing her behavior." 5. 5 people before him. How many had she scared away? How many had she bullied into silence? Mark felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief because he wasn't alone. Anger because the HOA knew something was wrong for years, yet Karen still controlled the neighborhood. On the 6th day of the investigation, the board called a special meeting. It wasn't public. It wasn't announced. It was a private session for one purpose only: reviewing Karen's actions. Karen attended the meeting. Mark waited outside the building, pacing slowly. He couldn't hear anything happening inside. No voices. No shouting. No footsteps. Just silence. The kind of silence that makes the air feel heavy. After almost an hour, the board members walked out. They looked stern, tired, and focused. Karen came out last. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes refused to look at anyone. She walked past Mark without saying a word, her expression cracked like something inside her had finally broken. Mark didn't know if that meant victory or danger. Linda approached him with a gentle smile and said quietly, "We'll send the official decision tomorrow." Mark nodded. "Is it good?" Linda placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's fair." Then she left. That night, the neighborhood felt strange. The wind was louder. The houses seemed quieter. And Karen's home was completely dark, not a single light on. Mark sat by his window, wondering what the HOA would decide. Would they finally see the truth? Would they finally stop her? Or would Karen come back stronger? As he stared into the stillness of the night, one thought repeated in his mind. Tomorrow will decide everything. The next morning, Mark woke up earlier than usual. His heart was beating fast, and he didn't know if it was fear or relief waiting to happen. Today was the day. The HOA decision would arrive. He made coffee, but he couldn't drink it. His hands shook slightly. He kept checking his phone every minute, waiting for the email, waiting for a sign. Outside, the neighborhood was silent. No kids playing. No cars passing. No dogs barking. Even Karen's house looked frozen. Her curtains were tightly closed. No movement. No shadow. No sound. It felt like the whole street was holding its breath. At 9:17 a.m., Mark's phone buzzed. A new email. Subject, HOA investigation, final decision. Mark opened it slowly, like he was peeling open a door that had been locked for months. As he read the first lines, he felt his shoulders drop, not from sadness, but from a huge weight lifting off his chest. The message was clear. You are not at fault. All complaints filed against you are unsupported. Karen's actions violated HOA rules and neighborhood conduct policies. Mark kept reading. The email listed everything the board discovered. Karen filed false reports. She edited and manipulated photos. She lied to neighbors. She spread false rumors. She misused HOA rules. She intentionally targeted Mark. Then came the part that shocked him. Karen is removed from all HOA decision rights for a full year. She will no longer contact you, photograph you, or file complaints against you. If she violates this, she will face fines and possible legal action. Mark stared at the screen. For a moment, he didn't move. He didn't breathe. Then he let out a quiet laugh, not a loud laugh, not a mocking one, but a soft, exhausted laugh of someone who survived a storm. It was over. Finally, it was over. Mark stepped outside, expecting Karen to jump out, shout, accuse, or demand attention. But she didn't come. When he looked toward her house, he saw her standing behind her window, her face pale, her eyes following him, not with power, not with pride, but with shock. She knew. She knew she lost. And she didn't know what to do with that loss. For the first time, Karen wasn't the ruler of the neighborhood. She wasn't the loudest voice. She wasn't the queen of rules. She was just quiet. Mark walked to his car. He opened the door. He sat down. But before he drove off, he glanced at Karen one more time. A strange moment passed between them, a silent conversation. Karen didn't shout. She didn't cry. She didn't blame him. She simply stood there like someone who realized her control was gone. Completely gone. Later that afternoon, Mark went to check his mailbox. Instead of a notice or a warning, he found something unexpected. A letter from a neighbor. He opened it. We're sorry for not speaking earlier. Karen scared many of us for years. Thank you for standing up. You helped all of us. Mark felt a warm pressure in his chest. He didn't expect that. Another neighbor waved at him from across the street. A small wave, but a real one, the first friendly gesture he had seen since moving in. Soon, another neighbor stepped outside and said, "Glad things are fixed now, Mark." Mark smiled. The neighborhood didn't feel like enemy territory anymore. It finally felt like a place he could live in. Maybe even belong to. As evening arrived, Mark parked his car in his driveway just like always. But tonight felt different. Tonight he wasn't nervous. He wasn't watching over his shoulder. He wasn't waiting for police sirens or HOA notices. He was simply home. He walked to his porch, sat in a chair, and breathed in the cool night air. No shouting. No cameras. No stress. Just peace. For the first time in weeks, he felt free. But the best moment came a little later. Mark checked his mailbox one last time before going inside. Inside it, he saw a small slip of paper from the HOA. He unfolded it. It was short, simple, and perfect. Thank you for your patience. The complaint against you was incorrect. Karen's behavior will be monitored. You did nothing wrong. Mark smiled. That line, "you did nothing wrong," felt like the real victory. Not the punishment Karen received. Not her removal from the HOA. Not the fine she now faced. But the truth. Finally written. Finally recognized. Finally official. Mark folded the slip, put it in his pocket, and walked inside his home. The long battle was finally over. And the best part? Karen never tried anything again. Not a word. Not a complaint. Not a picture. She stayed silent not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. And every time Mark parked his car in his driveway, he couldn't help but smile. Because the HOA summons, the one meant to scare him, ended up doing the opposite. It proved Karen wrong. It proved him right. And for him, that victory was priceless.